What happened? I guess they're not friendly.
We have to go now.
Go.
No, a little hideout. My house, my rules.
Lead the way.
They don't stop.
Josh, you're gonna kill him!
At the beginning of the film, we are introduced to two sisters, Helly and Sarah. Helly had planned a camping trip with her friend that day and went to wake Sarah up, hoping she would join them. However, Sarah, burdened by her ongoing struggle with drug addiction, refused due to her lack of energy and motivation. Helly tried to convince her, insisting that an outdoor trip could help clear her mind, but Sarah remained uninterested. Eventually, Helly and her friend Josh managed to persuade her, and the three of them packed their camping gear and set off. Their destination was deep in the heart of a serene jungle, untouched by the chaos of the outside world. Helly and Josh were instantly captivated by the tranquility of the place. As they set up camp, Josh shared his dream of living in a secluded spot like this with his family, a sentiment that made Helly blush. She wasn't ready for such thoughts yet. Meanwhile, Sarah, disconnected from their enthusiasm, wandered away, searching for a phone signal. While trying to get a signal, she stumbled upon a breathtaking view of the city in the distance. As she held her phone to the sky, hoping for a connection, she noticed something unusual. A massive, unidentifiable object was descending from the sky. Panic gripped her as she realized it wasn't just any object, it was a spaceship. She sprinted back to Helly and Josh, urging them to come see for themselves. By the time they reached the spot, the spaceship had become more visible. At first, they were awestruck by the spectacle. But their excitement quickly turned into fear as they noticed a strange smoke seeping from the craft. The realization struck them, this was not a peaceful landing. Aliens had arrived, and their intentions seemed hostile. As Sarah frantically tried calling a friend, she heard nothing but terrified screams on the other end. The city was already under attack. Before they could react, a deafening sound burst from the spaceship, knocking them unconscious. Hours passed, and by the time they regained consciousness, night had fallen. Helly was the first to wake up, followed shortly by Sarah. They struggled to piece together what had happened. Their first instinct was to call for help, but now, all signals were gone. The world had gone silent. Fear set in as they decided to make their way back to the car, hoping to find some news on the radio. Helly stayed behind at the campsite while Sarah and Josh made their way through the dark woods. Along the way, they heard eerie noises, sounds unlike any wild animal. Their fear grew with each step. When they finally reached the car, they discovered that the radio was dead. There was no news, no connection to the outside world. Dejected, they returned to the camp where Helly had lit a fire for them. As they tried to calm their nerves and plan their next move, Sarah suddenly noticed a shadowy figure in the distance. Startled, she turned on her flashlight. The beam revealed a woman, injured and staggering toward them. But something was terribly wrong. Her skin oozed a black liquid, and her movements were unnatural. It was as if she had been infected by something inhuman. The woman's condition terrified them. As she let out a ghastly sound, seemingly calling for others like her, Josh acted on impulse. In a desperate attempt to protect them, he killed her. But the horror didn't end there. The group realized that she had been infected by the alien virus. If she had turned into this monstrous form, how many others had? And worse, had her cries alerted more of them? They quickly decided to leave before more infected arrived. As they moved cautiously through the woods, they encountered more terrifying figures, humans who had been transformed into grotesque creatures by the alien virus. Desperate to stay unnoticed, they moved silently, avoiding detection. Soon, they encountered a man named Liam, who, unlike the others, was still human. He told them he was heading home, a place well hidden and secure. Given the dire situation, the three hesitated but ultimately decided to follow him. They had little choice if they wanted to survive. As they traveled, dawn broke, but their relief was short-lived. An infected man suddenly appeared and attacked them. They ran, but Josh tripped and fell right into the creature's grasp. Before it could kill him, Liam intervened, striking the infected man down. However, in the struggle, Josh was bitten. He hid the wound from the others, fearing what it might mean for him. As they pressed on, Sarah's condition deteriorated. Withdrawal symptoms from her addiction made every step excruciating. But with Helly's support, she pushed forward. Finally, they reached Liam's shelter, a well-hidden tent deep in the woods. Liam laid out strict rules. They had to set up their own tent separately, and no one was to enter his space, especially Sarah. He had noticed her addiction and, knowing that his tent contained alcohol, didn't trust her around it. Begrudgingly, they agreed and settled in. That evening, a military helicopter flew overhead. Josh, believing it to be a rescue team, eagerly set off a green flare to signal their location. But Liam reacted in anger. He knew the truth. The military wasn't just rescuing survivors, they were eliminating them. The flare had put them all in grave danger, attracting both the military and the alien creatures. As they argued, Josh's body began to tremble uncontrollably. The virus was taking hold. Realizing the threat he posed, he warned Helly to leave him behind. But she refused to abandon him. Meanwhile, Liam, furious over the flare incident, packed up his belongings and left. Sarah, terrified of losing the only person who could protect them, ran after him and managed to convince him to stay. That night, as they sat together, Sarah noticed the infection spreading on Josh's arm. The blackened wound meant he was changing. She insisted they remove him from the group, but Helly refused, determined to protect him. The next morning, Josh struggled against the virus's control, trying to suppress his transformation. As Sarah woke up, Liam handed her a dose of drugs. She hesitated, but unable to endure the withdrawal any longer, she gave in. Meanwhile, Helly went to fetch water but discovered something horrifying. The water had turned black, contaminated by the alien virus. They could no longer rely on it for survival. Back at the camp, Josh, still fighting the infection, wanted to talk to Sarah. But by then, she was under the influence of drugs, unable to think clearly. When Helly returned, she saw them together and immediately realized what had happened. Liam had given Sarah the drugs, possibly to manipulate her. Furious, she confronted him, warning him never to take advantage of her sister again. Liam, however, remained indifferent. He knew they had no other option but to rely on him. Determined to find clean water, Liam told Josh about a hidden lake that might still be uncontaminated. Together, they set out to find it. Meanwhile, Sarah's intoxication led to a heated argument with Helly, blaming her for forcing her into this nightmare. Helly, burdened with guilt, could only try to console her. Out in the wilderness, Liam and Josh finally found the lake. To their relief, the water was still clean. But the true test of survival was only just beginning. At the lake, they started filling as much water as they could store. As they moved around, they noticed a dead woman lying near the lake. What struck them as strange was the mark in the middle of her forehead, as if she had been shot, yet not a drop of blood had come out of her body. They stood there, staring at her lifeless form for a long time before deciding to head back to their camp. As they journeyed back, night had fallen, and before they knew it, they were ambushed by the infected people controlled by the alien virus. Liam had weapons to defend himself, but there were too many of them, making it nearly impossible for just the two of them to fight off the attack. On top of that, Josh was still struggling with his infection, losing control of his mind repeatedly. In such a dire situation, fighting became even harder. As she stood there, staring at the ruins of humanity, she realized she didn't even know how much longer she would remain herself. The alien virus could take her at any moment. Overcome with grief and despair, Helly collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down her face. And with that, the story ended. Thanks for watching.